Well, Cyrus, thanks for dropping by.
Thanks for having me.
Where do we begin with before we dive into your career, I'd love to know your backstory because I've never talked about this part with you. How did you come to America and your background in Iran? Walk us through that.
Well, my parents are Iranian immigrants. My mom passed away recently, but my father's still with us. He's 96. She was 96. So they came to the United States. Well, my dad came in 1948. So, and my mom, I think, came in 1950. I was born here in the States. So I'm an American by birth. My parents became naturalized American citizens. They did go back in the mid 70s. My father went back to work on some special projects for the Shah of Iran, who was still in power at the time. And then in 79, the revolution happened. Last time I was in Iran was the late 70s, visiting them.
Wow. What did your father do for the Shah?
He was engaged in creating a kind of junior college, community colleges, sort of set up throughout the country so that people could learn hard skills that would be a benefit to the country. So he came back there to set up that whole system.
Well, you must have been raised with thoughts about the 79 revolution and America's role in it. And you must have heard a lot about that growing up.
Yes. I mean, my parents were there when it happened. They had to get out.
They were in Iran when it happened?
Yes. In 79, 78, 79. 78 was when it became this overt kind of, effort to get rid of the Shah and bring in the Islamists. I was at school at USC at the time.
Mm.
And, you know, it was the predominant feeling here in the States and through the media in this country was, oh, Shah was a bad guy. And isn't it great that the students are taking over? And I knew better. And my father said to me, if they think the Shah is a bad guy, wait till they see what these guys are like.
So true.
So, it's just, I really believe that there's no comparison also between the totalitarian measures taken by the Ayatollahs compared to the Shah. The Shah's crime, and I used to say this to people and they didn't believe me, was he was too liberal. That was why he was overthrown.
Mm.
He was giving, he allowed women to get rid of the veil. He allowed them to get an education, to work. The Iran had become very Western oriented. That was why the revolution happened, not because he was a dictator.
What were his crimes? He was tough on militants, imprisoning him, torturing him. What was he doing that was so awful?
That was the charge. Those were the charges. I do think that I'm when you really break it down, I have no doubt that his secret police and some of his supporters may have overextended themselves in their zealotry to keep him in power. But I would say the Ayatollahs within a few months far exceeded any crimes that he'd committed.
Mm. And how responsible was Jimmy Carter for his fall?
Depends on who you talk to. I mean, there are a lot of people who felt that Carter kind of fell in with the crowd that was saying the Shah was too dictatorial and too restrictive, and that his secret police were too active. So Jimmy Carter was very active in this whole human rights campaign, and he wanted allies who respected human rights. I think that, I don't think that helped the Shah. And I certainly think that it created a climate in which he was much willing to sort of wipe his hands free of him and see if he could make friends with the Ayatollah. I very distinctly remember Jimmy Carter basically saying, you know, if I can sit down with this Ayatollah guy, I think we're going to be fine.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard to imagine. So you think a different American president could have protected the Shah, and this wouldn't have happened? Is that what I'm reading into your?
Well, possibly. If they, I think a different president with the will may have been able to help the Shah. At the end of the day, I blame the Shah himself. I think that he was, you know, he was very ill at the time. We didn't know this.
Right, cancer.
Right. He was very ill. I think he was a little too wishy-washy at some critical moments. And ultimately, I put the blame on him. He just didn't have the, you know, that killer instinct to want to stay in power. And sometimes, unfortunately, that killer instinct is just that, literally.
Right. You know, I think Gorbachev was missing that killer instinct too.
Yeah.
I think we'll talk about, you know, Reagan and your film, but I feel like Gorbachev, that moment where he needed to really put the iron, you know, crush the dissent, he just didn't have it within him to kill a bunch of people and have bloodshed in the streets.
And, you know, you can say that to his credit as well. The problem is most revolutions don't improve the circumstances in those countries. Unfortunately, history has taught us that.
With the exception of the American Revolution.
That's one of the few exceptions. Yeah.
Right. Ends up being much worse. Well, boy, so much to talk about. We've worked on a movie together, but let's go back at least to your Oliver Stone movie that you worked on. You and him together worked on. I believe you directed and wrote it. He produced it. Is that correct?
Yes, it was the day Reagan was shot.
So we have in common a Reagan movie, and yours focused on March 30th, 1981. And yeah, tell me how that one came about. How did you start the idea, or was it Oliver? How did it come about?
No, it started with me. I don't, you know, living in Camarillo, I don't live far from the Reagan Library. If I had a really good telescope, I could see it from here. So I did some research. There wasn't a lot written about it, but there was enough. And I thought, you know, this is a great story because there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that people don't realize, you know, occurred. Some of them, by the way, that I depicted in the film that I had supporting sources for, the media attacked me and said, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. Well, they did happen, and history has proved me right.
What were those things?
Well, one of them was a scheduled test of the nuclear defense system was scheduled for that day.
Right.
And the Russians interpreted it, the Soviets interpreted it as aggressive actions being taken in response to the Reagan shooting.
Yeah, I got that from Dick Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's been since my movie was made in 2001. So we're talking 25 years ago.
Right.
But anyway, I wrote a spec script. I got a lot of big offers for the script, as much as $750,000 for the script alone, which I turned down because I was also looking for a directing opportunity. I had interest from Showtime and HBO. So then I get a call from my agent saying Oliver Stone wants to meet you at 5:30 today. I'd never met Oliver Stone. So I went and met with Oliver. He was great. He said he wanted to make a movie of it, a feature that he would direct, which I was inclined to accept, but until he told me that I had to wait for him to do another movie first. I was experienced enough at that time that I knew there's a very real chance this movie won't happen. I'll be waiting around forever. So Showtime stepped up, made the offer, greenlit the picture, and I made it for Showtime and Paramount. Richard Dreyfuss played Alexander Haig, and Richard Crenna played Reagan. And that was, like I said, 2001. It's still the highest rated 2 hour movie Showtime ever did.
Mm.
We were probably on the cover of every Sunday newspaper TV guide.
Hmm.
You know, in those days, they'd always have a little TV thing. They don't do it anymore on the Sunday newspapers.
Yeah.
And it was well reviewed, well received. And, you know, I was very proud of it. So, shot on a very tight budget.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you were more successful with Richard Dreyfuss than I was. I tried to convince him for 7 years to play Gorbachev, but he wanted more of a Reagan Gorbachev movie as opposed to the Reagan story. So,
Right.
at best, we made some modifications in the script, but we just couldn't quite get there. But what a lovely man, though.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I liked working with him.
Yeah. And then you went on, of course. There was wasn't there the Path to 9/11, or am I thinking of something else?
No, there was. I did the, I, you know, I, well, I did a mini series for Spielberg called Into the West,
Right.
which was a big hit on TNT. Um, and I had developed a pilot, which then became a hit television show called La Femme Nikita for USA Network. But I also, yeah, ended up doing Path to 9/11 after that. Path to 9/11 was a miniseries, sort of connecting the dots between the 93 attack on the World Trade Center and the attacks on 9/11,
So,
which
Cyrus, where can I watch this movie of yours?
Path to 9/11, you can't get it anywhere because it
That's
stirred
why
up
I
a
asked.
controversy. Yeah, I know. It stirred up a controversy. I'm glad you remember it because so many forget. The Clintons got very upset because we depicted the opportunities to get bin Laden, which were numerous, and many of them detailed in the 9/11 Commission report. So, and I only showed three in the miniseries, but the Clintons got upset and tried to stop it from airing. It became a big controversy. Bob Iger finally agreed to cut about 3.5 minutes, having to do with a critical point where Afghan and CIA, operatives have bin Laden's compound surrounded, and they're waiting on the phone for the on the satellite phone for the order to go in, which basically they don't get.
Mm.
When you extend that into a very dramatic and for Americans a very emotional dramatic depiction, it's agonizing. So when we did it, which was the mistake, well, our mistake was we did an advanced screening at the National Press Club, and there were a number of tables there that were occupied by Clintonistas.
Mm.
So they immediately set about trying to stop it from airing. They convinced Disney to cut 3.5 minutes, and they came after me.
Mm.
So my phone was ringing a lot with a
How are
lot of.
how are the IRS audits?
Well, the IRS audits weren't bad because I have a very persnickety accountant, but my phone rang a lot, and they weren't friendly calls.
What kind of calls would you get, Cyrus?
You so and so, we're going to get you. You're a dead man. How could you? How could you make all this stuff up? It was moveon.org and what's the pink group? It was a number of different, far left groups of the time.
Oh, so
Now they're out and out communists.
you got doxxed, and they put your phone number online or something like that.
Yeah, my address. Yeah. And
Um,
I got a nice little gift in my mailbox.
what was Clinton's hesitation? I mean, why wouldn't he take him out? What was the problem?
I think that at that time, it's interesting. You ask about Jimmy Carter in Iran. Clearly, there was a prevailing belief that Carter lost the presidency with the failed rescue mission.
Right.
I think after Carter, every president very reluctant to take any risks.
Right.
So I think Clinton was very hesitant to send in men to try and capture bin Laden with the possible, or actually the likelihood, that innocents might be killed. So The Clintons thing was we'll bomb them from afar. We'll drop some missiles and act like we're tough, instead of actually sending in guys to nab him.
Was he distracted by Monica Lewinsky? Was that part of the story?
Well, actually, yes, that was part of the story, but it wasn't emphasized, at least in my miniseries. But in terms of the prevailing beliefs of the time, was that yes, he was preoccupied with this scandal, and wasn't willing to make hard decisions.
So the last time I checked, I'm living in America, the land of freedom, the home of the brave, and I can't watch your movie. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I can get you a copy, the uncut version, even, but you
Well, I
can.
appreciate that, but I think that viewers should be able to watch whatever they want.
Now, I've heard you can find it somewhere on YouTube, but I can't guarantee that. I know people who've checked and sort of dug it out of YouTube somewhere, but no, you cannot order a copy on Amazon or Etsy or anywhere else.
So to this day, ABC is censoring your movie.
Yep,
Wow. All right.
it's pretty
Well,
amazing.
yeah. Well, from there you moved on. I know the next time I heard your name was the Stoning of Soraya M.
Yeah.
Another controversial movie. You seem to kind of tiptoe into these controversial movies. I don't know if this is just coincidence or says something about you, but that was another controversial movie.
Well, it was a powerful story. It dealt with Iran. My father had traveled to Iran in 2003. Okay, the Ayatollahs are in power, and he was going home. He had been there once before in the 90s, hadn't had a problem. He went there in 2003 and basically was seized at the airport and went through a rough time. He eventually got out, but at this time, the Ayatollahs were doing a lot of kind of shakedown schemes. They're well known for that. So I came across this story. My wife and I, she had had a film made that starred Charlie Sheen in the 90s. She was a fairly known screenwriter, but then she'd gotten out of it. She didn't like developing in Hollywood. And then we both hit on this idea when we were in Morocco shooting Path to 9/11 that, we should look at Stoning because we'd read the book. And it's kind of an Oxbow incident, kind of very contained story, very powerful, based on a true incident of a woman who was stoned to death, uh, and in a small village in Iran under Sharia law.
So that made you a favorite of the Iranian government.
Yeah, they condemned and banned the film. We smuggled through friends of mine in Washington 20,000 DVDs inside Iran. This is 2009, so DVDs were still the way that you saw movies.
Right.
Those 20,000 copies were recopied in the multi thousands, and my movie became an underground hit, bootleg smash in Iran.
So you've managed to tick off the Iranian government and the American government and get banned in both countries.
Well,
This isn't
kind
a,
of.
this is not
Yeah.
an easy thing to do.
Yeah. In fact, I've got another country. When we get to my latest film, you'll hear that one. You'll like that. My latest film, which is already shot and in the can and edited and done. But
Which country will be banning this one?
Brazil.
Brazil. Okay.
I just finished a movie with Jim Caviezel playing Jair Bolsonaro,
Right. Okay.
sort of dramatizing. Shot it in Brazil. Actually, shot it right under their noses, dramatizing his rise in popularity and winning the election in 2018, and when they tried to kill him. It was a pretty severe assassination attempt on Bolsonaro. He should have died about 27 days or so before the election. Once basically he'd been established as a threat to win, they then tried to kill him. So we've done a movie about that, and the current government is concerned, to say the least.
Mhm.
So I've got to figure out a way to get that movie out, if not in Brazil, at least here.
Right. And then we worked together a bit on a movie called Young Messiah.
Yes.
Came on much, much later to help out with some things. But that was an interesting movie. My mother loved that movie, by the way. She loved
Great.
the portrayal of 12-year-old Jesus. And you had a really beautiful mother-son moment in that movie, reminiscent of Mel and the Passion. I think it was really, really interesting.
Thank you.
We don't think about that era, do we? Most of us don't, because the gospel is sort of silent on that era. Most for the most part, I should say, not totally.
Yeah,
silent.
no, for the most part, you're right. I mean, it's his childhood is kind of a mystery. So we took a chance on telling that story in a very reverential way. But it still gets you in trouble with people
Yeah.
because it's outside the canon. But I'm very fond of that movie. That was shot in Italy. Came out in 2016.
The comedian Michael Jr. has this great bit he does where he has Mary saying to her Jesus brothers, "Why can't you be more like Jesus?" It must have been really tough to be up in that family.
Yes.
This is your big brother, always being compared to him. Go
Absolutely.
turn that water into wine. No, I can't. You can't? What's wrong with you? But no, I think it was really. I don't think you were attacked. Of course, that was our friend Anne Rice. You
It
based
was
it
based
on
on
that
an
book,
Anne Rice. Yeah, it was based on an Anne Rice bestseller. You're right.
right? What what did you learn from that experience? I'm sure you took some arrows again, but I don't think it wasn't quite as intense. But you probably took some surprising arrows on that one.
Well, look, whenever you're doing, and I kind of knew this beforehand, Mark, but I love the story. Whenever you're doing a story with Jesus, you are going to get some slings and arrows, and you've got to be careful.
Yeah,
And it's not like the Muslim world where if you depict Muhammad, you're basically on a death list. But you still have to be respectful and reverential. I thought we were. And for the most part, we got good response. I mean, especially from the Catholic side,
yeah.
we got very good responses. Not so much from the evangelical side, but you know what? I'm very proud of that movie.
Well, you know what I learned from the experience of the Passion. Um, it's not that evangelicals. I mean, definitely most Christians are uptight about extra biblical interpretations of Jesus. However, if they trust the filmmaker, the storyteller, they're okay with it. If
Yeah,
they don't, they're not okay with it.
right.
So they trusted Mel,
Yeah,
came up with all this crazy stuff like Satan has a baby. And I'll never forget, Cyrus, I brought some people in to watch The Passion in Mel's office before it came out. It was a bunch of ministers there. And this one guy goes, now, why does Satan have a baby? And Mel's like, well, I thought it'd be kind of cool that he's a copycat. So God has Jesus, Satan has a baby.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but they trusted him. And so if it was Oliver Stone or if it was somebody else, they
Or
would say,
me.
you don't trust it. But if they know where you're coming from a good place, like they trust Dallas Jenkins, so he does all kinds of crazy stuff, whatever, autistic or whatever he does, and they're okay with it because they know the intent. So the intent is important.
Yeah. No, I think it is. I also feel like, and I mean, you're very well aware of this, having produced and also worked on marketing big films, that, we were with Focus Features, and I would say it was about almost 3 months before the movie was scheduled to come out. Everybody we worked with for 2 years, including the entire marketing department, got fired.
Right.
So they came in with an entirely new administration, and they're not going to push the previous administration's movies. So we got a very tepid
Right.
sort of release. I mean, we were on over 1,500 screens because we contractually had to be, but there wasn't an equivalent spend
Right.
to make the public aware of the movie. I mean, I think the public was more aware of a tiny film like The Stoning of Soraya M,
Yeah.
which at most I think played on 150 art houses. around the country. I think people were more aware of that movie than they were of The Young Messiah.
It's tough. I'll never forget, one of my favorite things from that campaign was I realized that Alice Cooper was a huge Anne Rice fan.
Ah,
So I arranged for them to talk to each other.
oh, nice.
And we published that somewhere. It was a great, two legends admiring each other. It was a great, and of course, Alice admires the topic as well.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. So, yeah, then more recently, I'm sure there have been others as well, but on my radar was a movie called Sarah's Oil.
Yes.
Talk about that one too.
Well, let's see. Well, yeah, 2016 I did Young Messiah. 2020 I did Infidel, another Middle
Okay,
East thriller set in Iran with Jim Caviezel.
right.
Came out in the middle of the pandemic. And then Sarah's Oil during the pandemic. I'd say over the last 10 years, I've been writing primarily with a writing partner. I started out my career as a writer by myself, but my wife had succeeded as a writer. Also, my youngest son is also a WGA writer. But I've worked with her just to have more things to develop. And also, I find that it's harder as I've gotten older to just sit down and write a script all by myself. So Betsy and I wrote Sarah's Oil during the pandemic, which was based on a little known story that I came across quite by accident, true story, about a black girl in 1913 Oklahoma who had been given land by the state. Oklahoma just become a state because her forebears, her ancestors had been slaves of, interestingly enough, the Creek Indian Nation. So, so they were giving out 160 acres for people 10 and over. So she got 160 acres and so did her parents, but they had gotten it years earlier. But she got basically useless land, infertile, just prairie grass, basically. And her father couldn't afford the property taxes on it and wanted to sell it. And she felt nobody had ever given her anything. And, she wanted to hold on to it. She said, God gave me that land for a reason. She was the first one in the family who could read. And she started because she's going to school and she's reading about oil strikes in Oklahoma and East Texas. And she says, maybe I got oil on my land. So the movie basically is the story of how she turned out to be right and what happened and the fight over the land. And, it was a different time. And it's a really powerful story. It's probably of the features I've done, my most successful, although I'm still waiting for the full accounting from MGM and Amazon. But
Wait, are you saying there may be some dishonesty in Hollywood accounting?
no, just delays.
Chillax, okay.
Delays. So Sarah's Oil was a blast. Shot it in Oklahoma. It was the first movie I've shot in the United States since, 1998. So, because everything else I shot overseas, I shot in Morocco and Jordan and Italy and Brazil, and so shot in Oklahoma. And I realized why I prefer shooting overseas, which is we have so many restrictions here that make it so difficult and so expensive to make a movie in this country.
Yep.
It's really unfortunate, but I did it, and even though it was MGM and Amazon, I had to do it for a price. Zach Levi is in it. Zach plays a wildcatter who ends up helping the girl, and it's a real story about entrepreneurship and sticking up for yourself. It's not a story about victimhood. And anyway, very proud of the movie. Probably got my best reviews on that movie, although I'd gotten very strong reviews on Stoning, and the best audience score on Sarah's Oil. So very proud of that. Of course, it came out last November in theaters, about 2,500 screens, but you know how it is. It's Amazon. They own MGM. So they basically want 2 weeks and out because they're really greasing the skids for the streaming release.
Right.
And we actually did pretty good numbers for, a movie that had zero or very little kind of theatrical promotion. And anyway, but when it came out, I was down in Brazil shooting the other movie. So I wasn't even here when the movie came out. It's now just recently become available for free on Amazon. So anybody can watch it on Amazon
Hmm.
if they have Prime.
Hmm.
And otherwise, look, I just finished post-production on Dark Horse, which is the story of Bolsonaro, starring Jim Caviezel, set in Brazil. Plays like a real political thriller. Not on the genre-wise, not too dissimilar from the day Reagan was shot.
Hmm.
Um, Only it's the day Bolsonaro was stabbed.
Right, right.
And I'm very proud of the movie. I think it plays like gangbusters. I'm going to be showing it in Las Vegas, September 12th at that voter fraud convention they're having there.
Voter fraud convention?
Yeah, it's a whole different, just different groups from different countries who are trying to remember the name of the darn thing. But it's like it's going to be an audience of like 750 people.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's basically, we're just trying to get the film seen right now because there's been some political shenanigans down in Brazil to try and stop the film from being released. The original intention was to release it before the Brazilian election, which is October 30th, but they've tied the film up in litigation down there.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's called the Storm Summit, September 10th to 13th in Las Vegas. But
What is it about politicians that they're so afraid of movies?
yeah, and then when they see the movie, everybody says, "What was the big deal?"
I watched that Apprentice movie that my friend Tom distributed. I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, there's like one or two scenes that were a little over the top that I wouldn't have put in there. But it wasn't, it wasn't not that Trump didn't really oppose it a lot. But I'm just saying you've got this thread running through your movies now of politicians trying to block your movies, and
Yeah,
they must really see the power of movies to want to work so hard to block it.
I think they see the power of my movies. I mean, honestly, if it's not any good, they're not going to, what they're worried about is how effectively it hits people on a dramatic and emotional level.
Yeah,
And if it's a piece of crap, they don't care,
right.
And I think that also, let's face it, especially when you have the mainstream media, the predominant media sort of in your corner of the aisle, they can end up drumming up a lot of nonsense. And unfortunately, the media in Brazil is no different.
That Chappaquiddick movie that who was it? My friend Freestyle. They made that movie. It was pretty critical of Ted, but by that time there was nobody left to try to block it in the Kennedy family. They're all dead. And what's Maria Shriver going to do? Try to block a movie? It's like
No, you're right.
came
And
out.
I like that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty accurate movie, even though it was tough. It sounds like it's about what happened, but I could see 20 years earlier, if Ted Kennedy were still around, he would have marshaled all of the old media forces and blocked it, just like yours is blocked. But, it came and went, and the world didn't end, and we have just another depiction. So I sort of belong to the let a thousand blossoms, what is it, let a thousand flowers bloom attitude that the Chinese communists had for a very short period of time, by the way, before they changed their minds. But
Yeah.
let 1,000 movies on these topics come out and let the public decide.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But that's just me. Back to the Reagan movie. As you may know, I had John Hinckley on recently, and what an interesting day you chose. I know there's another movie called Rawhide Down that they're trying to make, I think, but I don't know how they can top what you already did.
Well,
What are your thoughts on that day? I asked Hinckley this too, but it does feel, even if I were not a religious person, it feels like there was that day was so orchestrated in the sense that, I mean, the randomness of him happening to be nearby, happens to go over, the bullet, missing and careening off the car door. It just seems like the whole day was just like, yeah, I don't want to say orchestrated, but as I said, if I was a secular person, I would see the divine hand in it. How do you feel about any of that?
No, I think so too. I think you're right. I think there was a whole succession of things, both bad and good. I mean, for example, Hinckley, when he arrived there, had no inkling or thought that he was going to get close enough to get a good shot.
Right,
But he was hanging around when Reagan arrived.
right.
When Reagan arrived, he got close enough to shake his hand. And he realized if I can get close enough to shake his hand, I can get close enough to shoot him.
Now, Cyrus,
So,
did you know that?
right.
Because I thought that was a revelation in our interview. He was planning to shoot him upon arrival. Had you heard that before?
Well, I had heard that he was contemplating shooting him, but he didn't know if he would get close enough. Then
So
he gets close enough to shake his hand, but he either lost his nerve. I don't know what he said to you, but
that,
then he realized I'm going to stick around.
that's what he said. He said Reagan smiled and waved at him, and he kind of fumbled for the gun because, the guy, your target's smiling and waving at you, and he lost it. So that's why he waited around for the hour. I had no idea, but you were kind of onto that already.
Yeah, it's in my version of the movie where he's coming up and he's reaching inside and Reagan's seeing him and responding, and he doesn't do it.
Right.
And then it's like the Archduke assassination that launched World War One.
Right.
Those guys were waiting to get him, the shooter, what was his name? And then he lost his nerve. And he went to a cafe filled with self-disgust. He's at this cafe, and look who drives up right in front. His target, the Archduke.
Wow.
And he comes out of the cafe and does it there.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, it's I think there's a great movie in that, by the way.
And Hinckley I think he admitted he was a lousy shot because he kind of sprayed everywhere with all this gunfire and missed Reagan, actually, of course, but it bounces off the limo.
Yeah, I mean, he got Reagan. He ended up getting Reagan basically through the armpit when Reagan was waving.
Right,
That was it, and that was a fragment.
right.
So it's very strange, and of course James Brady got it. But wow, yeah, no, it was a very fortuitous day in so many ways. The president was fortunate to live, and then to be taken instead of as intended to be being taken to the White House, he's taken to the George Washington Hospital.
Yeah, and the fact that the guy who makes that decision, Jerry Parr, is a guy who decides to become an agent because he watched a Reagan Secret Service movie.
Oh yeah,
It's just so bizarre and so. And then the surgeon, maybe you talked to him, I talked to him as well, Dr. Benjamin Aaron,
yeah,
religious man. He felt like this was his reason for being put on the planet, was to save Reagan's life that day. So all these moving pieces of a puzzle, both evil and good, all kind of coming together. It's a remarkable day.
yeah, no doubt.
I talked to Don Muma, his preacher, and he was there the next day at Reagan's bedside. And I'm just looking at my notes. He said he asked Reagan what would have happened if the bullet had been fatal, and Reagan told him, "I'd have been all right." And Muma said, "What do you mean by that?" And he goes, "Because I have a savior." And then he said, Reagan said he thought it was like a brushback pitch from God, like, "Hey, you're not all that. You're not all that. You may have won this landslide election, but it could be gone like that." And
Right.
he felt it was just really a reminder to be humble, which Reagan was a humble man, but I guess we all have our moments of pride, maybe, where we think we're great.
Sure.
But, so as I look through your work, there seems to be the thread of not the great man, but the indispensable man. Is that fair enough? That men
Absolutely.
shape the course of history, and women. I don't mean to say men in that way.
Yeah, yeah. Great leaders are instrumental. They usually end up filling a vacuum that no one else is up to. And whether it's Reagan or Margaret Thatcher or anybody else, but definitely,
Thinking about the shootings, just imagine if Trump hadn't moved his head that day. What what would have happened to our country if he had died that day in Butler? I can't even imagine the chaos that would have descended. Literally, the turning of the head by whatever fraction, a millimeter of a whatever.
yeah.
I just can't even, because that was a week before the convention. There was no vice presidential nominee. The party would have been thrown into utter chaos. Um, I just can't even fathom, other assassination attempts we would have survived, we would have recovered from, or we did recover from. But that one at such a critical moment, and the fierce loyalty of his fans, I think there would have been bedlam in the streets. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would have been nutty. No question about it. It's yeah, it's pretty amazing. And let's face it, there have been subsequent attempts. And
Yeah.
you know,
But now there's a vice president, so now there's a
there's
success,
a structure in place.
a
Yes.
succession plan. At the time, I think it might have been like Nikki Haley or somebody would have emerged, as the front runner the next week, which wouldn't have
Possible.
been good for that party, would have fractured everybody. But I just think his fans are so devoted. I don't think they would have taken that one lying down. And
No.
we really survived. We really dodged a bullet, so to speak, in more ways than one with that one. But back to your movie making. So you have movies about the indispensable leader, the importance of leadership, that men move events. Um, and that's what I'm picking. Whether it's Jesus or Reagan or Bolsonaro or whatever,
Yeah.
that human events are moved by people. Of course, you talked about the shooting of what was it again? The Archduke.
Yeah.
I mean, that literally started a war, right? So men move events.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no
And what's
question.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, yeah. And also, look, we can't we can't limit our thinking also just to events and history and as it is, but also we're in a business. We're in the business of drama and telling stories. And whenever we go into a movie theater, even subconsciously, we're looking for the guy or the gal who we're going to take this journey with. We're looking for a hero. And, what better heroes can there be on screen than those who are real ones?
Right.
I mean, I love true stories. I've always been, a fan of movies that were true stories. I love history. Um, so yeah, so I didn't go in this direction accidentally.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of anything on the Shah and the fall in Iran? Has that ever come across your
Yes.
thought process?
Yeah, I developed with Bob Yari a continuing series, kind of like The Crown, about the Shah and the Empress and the slide, of what happened. The problem was it was a difficult thing to set up, and there were competing projects. I don't think any of them are going to happen.
Why is it important to challenge our leaders to tell their stories in a way that they may not be very happy about?
Well, you know what? We're not in the business of is it hagiography, however you pronounce it, which is hero worship. We're looking at, okay, what has time and distance revealed to us about what actually took place, what actually went on. There's always revelations later. So you want to get at the truth. You also want to get at, okay, what was buried and for what reasons was it buried? So, it's like peeling back an onion and just trying, solving the mystery.
It's funny. We got accused in a lot of reviews of hagiography, and yet I just very intentionally had Reagan down and out in Vegas, throwing a beer bottle, drinking a beer. I went to Pat Boone, who was his buddy, and I said, "You think it'd be okay to portray Reagan, who was a teetotaler, drinking a beer in Vegas at his lowest?" He's like, "Are you kidding? Of course. Yeah, that's totally human." So it's interesting. I think that in our case, they wanted us to attack him for this issue or that issue, and we weren't there to do that. We were just there to tell a story. And there wasn't a dark, evil side of Reagan. The dark side was just his failures, a lot of failures in life. Kind of not a great actor, not a great this, not a great that. But anyway, we definitely got the hagiography tag. But the truth is, hagiographical stories are not very interesting. So I think the fact that people wanted to watch our movie, they understood that he had his rocky moments, But anyway, but yeah. So your point is the hagiography. It really doesn't serve. It doesn't serve the leader either, right? The leader needs to understand his weaknesses and his faults, and we need to understand those weaknesses and faults of that leader as well.
Yeah, sure. And also, especially in your movie, it's not just about history and events and successes and failures. You're getting to the heart of the man, and that's a little different, I think.
Which his own biographer called him inscrutable and gave up and threw up his hands and kind of what did a really weird book. So there is an element of Reagan that his wife Nancy said, I can't get. There's a certain place that I can't even get to.
Right.
I think he was so guarded, even from his own wife. And Don Muma, the pastor, did also tell me that he didn't feel that Nancy and Reagan were spiritually compatible, which I thought was interesting. So that may have been the last piece that she couldn't get to. And she said, I just don't quite understand his faith journey.
Right. Interesting.
But you had the luxury, I think, when you're focused on one day, I mean, that is luxurious is the term that comes to mind, because you can really go deep when you're talking about one day versus, 80 years in somebody's life. That must have been a pleasurable thing.
Well, it's like Aristotle's Poetics, it's just if you can do it in real time, that's, ideal. Mm-hmm. Real time, real events, whatever. It's just, I think, that was the big selling point on 24, the series, which was done by friends of mine. So, there's just that contained little period that you focus upon that illuminates the man and the times.
Right.
Okay. So that's why you do it. But I had grown up reading books by an author named Jim Bishop. He wrote a book called The Day Christ Died. He wrote a book called The Day Lincoln Was Shot. He wrote a book called The Day Kennedy Was Shot.
I see.
And I read those books and loved them when I was a kid. And I thought, wow, how about the day Reagan was shot? Because our hero survives. And that day sort of illuminated for the American public what kind of man he was and why he was appealing.
Right. Yeah, all those jokes he managed to whip out. I think we really did understand him that day in a way we hadn't before, and that shows the true character of the man. Even on the last horse ride, he was always worried about what other people didn't want to put people out, and so he was asking the nurses and the doctors, but who can? Yeah, that sense of humor. The other thing that I thought was interesting, Cyrus, that I'm sure you had heard of, was he felt that he had a sense, I guess, from God that if he didn't, his survival and recovery were tied to him forgiving Hinckley on the operating table. Like, who thinks in that way? You know, when you're,
Yeah.
I just don't think most of us think in that way. But for some reason, he felt that was a key for his recovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I shared that with Hinckley, by the way. He hadn't heard that before.
Interesting.
But, you know, in a way, I kind of felt sorry for him because he just did, I don't think he had that malevolent, I mean, of course, he had malevolent intent to kill somebody, but it wasn't targeted at Reagan. It was like whoever he could make the news with, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter. I guess he even went to Ted Kennedy's office. And so it's sort of like he's getting blamed for something that he did wrong, but it just seems like it was wildly, it could have been whoever.
Yeah.
He just wanted to make the news and somehow impress Jodie Foster. I'm not, that one is a mystery. That mystery is still unsolved in my mind after even speaking to him. I guess I'm so obsessed with the Taxi Driver movie that you're in that crazy world.
Sure.
Yeah. How's your writing process? How do you, and Betsy, your wife now, how do you guys write?
Well, it's funny. Whoever I'm working with, I also did a script with my son that Mark, and he's probably developed dozens of scripts in town over the last 10 years or so. It's not too dissimilar. Basically, we work out the outline or treatment together in the room, talking a lot, spitballing, and we work out sort of an outline, sort of a beat outline. So we know that's kind of becomes our guide, our roadmap for the structure of the story. Then the writing, we basically each attack it from different points. Someone may start in the first act and someone may be, later in the script, in the middle or wherever. And then we'll maybe do, say, 20, 30 pages, and then we'll kick it back and forth. We won't actually write the script pages together. And sometimes if one of us is more inclined to the idea, they'll either write it themselves or write the first draft and then kick it back and say, hey, you attack this. I'm worried about this section. I'm worried about this, see if you can fix it or whatever. So that's an interesting process for me and probably why I do it with family.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be harder to do with another writer. When I was writing on my own, of course, I was younger in those days and very energetic. So I would be up at 5:30 every day and try to be writing in my office by 6 at home, in my office at home by 6. And I would probably write till, 11 or a.m. or noon. And then I'd be done. I try to do 5 pages a day. But once again, even when I'm writing by myself, I used to work from a pretty good outline because early in my career, I didn't do outlines. And sometimes I'd get going on a script that was in my head and I would veer off in directions. I'd end up with hundreds of pages and go, oh my gosh, I don't know where the story is. Mm. So when I did episodic, I worked in episodic TV back in the day, you would have to write an outline. So I kind of learned how to do that and then decided, well, I've got to do this on the scripts I work on. Mm. And, those outlines can be of varying lengths. Some of them can be 15, 20 pages. Others can be 8 to 10 pages. I've even done like a 3-page, almost quick beat sheet for an outline. But just some kind of roadmap, I think, is essential. So, in my career, either written by myself or written with another writer, I've probably written feature length over 250 scripts. So, and it's the foundation for my career, for my directing, for my producing. every movie I've directed, I either wrote or co-wrote.
Right. Well, it's been great catching up with you. We're going to put in the show notes the links to the various movies that you have worked on, except for Path to 9/11, which if you want to watch it, you have to search the dregs of YouTube or
Contact me.
contact Cyrus for a private screening at the.
I have DVDs in my garage.
There's something wrong with a country that doesn't allow a movie to be released. That's all I have to say about our country.
I agree.
May that change. But it's great to visit with you and for folks to hear what you're up to. And thanks for
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it very much, and looking forward to what you come up with next.
Well, great to see you again, Cyrus.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.